Welcome back to Combat Mission, where we're going to take a look at the unsung key to Battlefield success, traffic management. If you've ever tried to get a group of vehicles to travel down a road in Combat Mission, you've probably experienced absolute chaos at least once. The AI is not well equipped to do things that seem so easy in the real world, like staying on the road, following the vehicle in front, or waiting behind a vehicle that suddenly stops instead of trying to pathfind around it. So we're going to look at what causes traffic snarl-ups in Combat Mission and a couple of ways to avoid them. Traffic jams in Combat Mission are basically the result of vehicles having to think for themselves. When we give a vehicle an order, we're giving it a waypoint that it's going to try and reach by the most direct route. If there's something in the way, the tech AI for the vehicle, or the driver, will attempt to plot its own path around it. And this is generally pretty inefficient. The tech AI can't think on its feet like a human being. It's not very good at seeing obstacles in advance. It's probably going to drive right into the problem before stopping and trying to negotiate its way around it in the most agonizing way possible. This means it's almost always a good idea to micromanage the routes that vehicles take. We can break the ground we want to cover into smaller, simpler sections in order to try and keep the TAC AI out of situations where it has to think for itself. And that's fine when we have enough space. In circumstances where we have a lot of vehicles trying to move through a small area, whether that's because we're restricted by the terrain or we're trying to take advantage of narrow features like roads or fords, we have to deal with the fact that other vehicles are also obstacles. And that injects a huge level of extra friction because, obviously, vehicles move. So now we're dealing with moving obstacles, some of which might unexpectedly stop or change speed for any number of reasons. They may have different top speeds, they might have to slow down to negotiate corners or permanent obstacles, they might become bogged in terrain, or they might be immobilized, destroyed, or forced to take evasive maneuvers by enemy action. If we have several vehicles moving through the same space, if they're driving down a street for example, we get the potential for some very serious cascading chaos as they all concertina in and start trying to pathfind around each other. This isn't just the kind of chaos that slows everything down and requires time and effort to sort out, it also creates a fantastic target. So how do we avoid this? The most obvious option is to just space things out. The further vehicles are apart, the more time they have to recover if something goes wrong, and the fewer vehicles are going to get snarled up before we can step in and fix things. The best way to make sure everything is nicely spaced out is to set off with the spacing between vehicles already established. That means setting up lines of vehicles in the deployment phase, or moving into the right positions later on before starting off. Obviously, the faster the vehicles go, the greater space they need between them. It's important to think laterally as well. Depending on the terrain, it might not be necessary to move in a single column. If there's room, it's almost always worth spacing out to the sides and moving in staggered column or a box. This also applies at higher levels. A company column is going to be very long, taking up a lot of space and arriving at its destination over an extended period. A company split into 3 platoon columns, using 3 different roads, is going to be able to arrive much faster. This is great when we have room, but that's not always the case. Players are probably going to want to be exploiting roads and terrain at speed straight out of their deployment zones, but deployment zones are frequently quite shallow, and it's not always possible to spread out across multiple routes. So we need a couple of ways of creating spacing when we don't have a lot of room. The easiest way is to use the pause command. The lead vehicle in a column has no pause, the second one has a 5-second pause, the third 10 seconds, the fourth 15, and so on. 5 seconds is usually enough to create a decent gap. Path, terrain, and speed depending. This method breaks down a little bit when there are more vehicles involved because the pause increments reach 20 seconds and then jump to 30, 45, and 60. But that's usually enough to get started, and depending on the starting space available, it might be necessary to send off vehicles in batches anyway. Another way to space vehicles out is to change the speed of their first order. So we have the lead vehicle using the fast command, the second using the quick, the third move, and the last slow. This way they'll spread themselves out quite naturally, and they can get up to full speed with another waypoint once there's room. It's also possible to vary the length of that first order or increase speed incrementally in follow-on orders in ways that give us a lot of granularity in how our column moves off. This is better when there's more vehicles involved, but it also requires more experience in judging which vehicles can move at what speeds for what distance to avoid the concertina effect. And of course it's possible to combine pauses and waypoints to get the kind of spacing and speed that we need to fit the situation. those are the two methods I usually use when I'm trying to make sure my pixeltruppen traffic flows smoothly. If you have any better ones, let everybody know in the comments, because this is definitely something that gets very frustrating very quickly when it all goes sideways. So a pretty short combat mission mechanical video, but one I thought was pretty necessary and hopefully very useful, especially to newer players. If you'd like to see these videos early and support the channel, you can do so via Patreon and YouTube memberships. Whether you do or not, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.